Hi, and welcome back to Let's Talk with Parul. And happy Valentine's Day, a day that we are told is meant for the celebration of love. And how we can celebrate something as complex as love in a single day, I'm not very sure. But I think it's just the occasion to try and figure out a few things about love. Love in the social media age, love in all its complications, in an age of instant gratification, that too. Culturally, how has love changed in definition? And for us individually, how it changes as we age. Lots of questions, lots of answers, and an expert panel to help me through it. Let me introduce you to them. We have with us Madhavi Menon. Welcome, Madhavi.
Thanks, Parul.
Madhavi is a professor of English at Ashoka University. She's a well respected author known for her writing on desire and queer theory. We will be discussing a lot from her current book, A History of Desire in India, and also from her teaching experiences, particularly your interactions with students, and of course your classes on the politics of desire. That was an interesting thought that caught my attention as well. So we'll be talking more about that.
Sure.
We also have with us Suparna Moitra. Hi Suparna, welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much, Parul.
Suparna is an actor, she's a dancer, a mother of two teenagers. You may have seen her on stage, advertisements, web series, TV serials. I don't know where to stop. Zangura is the
Yes.
one Broadway musical also
Yes.
that you've been on, Broadway style musical. And we'll be talking to Suparna about her own experiences with love. So, Madhvi, let's start with you. So, on this show, we have many a times challenged the scripts that we're all born with and we are expected to follow,
Yeah.
especially about gender stereotypes. I think love is also one of those concepts which we know that, we learnt about it only from what we've seen and heard. So my question to you is that the way we know it today, coy and suppressed, unless it's the Hindi movies, in which case it's melodramatic and loud and musical and beautiful, but the narrative that we know of it as of today, is that what love in India has been all about?
Well, I mean, love is and always has been a fantasy, right? It's a fantasy of coherence, it's a fantasy of happiness, it's a fantasy of everything going right in the world. But I think every one of us here, every one of our audience will know that that in fact is not love or not how love works. And so how to be realistic about a fantasy is the tricky part of our approach to love, right?
Sure.
How to sort of actually recognize that love is never going to be all that, which might allow us to approach it actually with a much more open idea and an open sort of atmosphere, and therefore expect less from it, and therefore perhaps crash fewer times than we might otherwise. So love is complicated, and it's the furthest thing from being simple. It's the furthest thing from being, the sort of heart-shaped card that we like sending out. I mean, the heart doesn't even look like that.
For
We
sure,
know that,
for
right?
sure. That's the best part of it.
It doesn't even look like that. And so, but that to me is the perfect embodiment of how our fantasy of love actually has very little relation to do with the reality of love. And when you asked me about whether love has always been like this in India, I mean, it's not a question I can answer because I actually don't write about love or think about love or teach about love. Because for me, love is always the sort of sentimentalized framework around desire. And my interest is in desire.
Desire, yeah.
And desire...
But it's so intrinsically linked, isn't it?
Yes
and no?
And no.
Yeah.
Because it's less sentimentalized. So
desire is less sentimental.
That's right. Because so we know that desire can be actually quite dangerous.
Sure.
Whereas with love, even though it can be dangerous, that's not the way we narrate it to ourselves. For us, love is this, perfection. Exactly. We package it wonderfully as being this fabulous thing. So I'm more interested in the more dangerous parts of it, which is desire. And so, I mean, if you look over the many, many centuries in India, desire is always described as the thing that can shake up the status quo. I mean, Vatsyayana says in the Kama Sutra, passion knows no order. And because he's very invested in this idea that desire is actually the thing that can bring down edifices, structures, status quo, people. And so none of them really talks about love. The Kama Sutra never talks about love. It's not something that, it's a very, if I were to sort of push this idea, and maybe I will, the idea of love is a fairly sort of capitalistic notion as we inhabit it today, right? It's very much tied to cards and chocolates and gifts.
So true.
Every ad I have heard for Valentine's Day today on the radio have all been for diamonds.
For diamonds? Oh, nice.
All of them.
Nice. I hope the relevant people are watching.
Yeah, you know what to do.
And so the idea of love is just so packaged right now as a commodity. You go to the market and you buy love as a flavor in the market. And so when we speak historically, that idea of commodification didn't quite exist in the same way as it does today.
So did the idea of love exist?
Of course. I mean, people talked about love all the time, just not in the way we do it today.
Sure,
just not in the sort of commodified, packaged notion. You know, we like to think of love as this free thing, but it's actually fairly well circumscribed and tightly circumscribed, which is why a lot of people can feel really bad about it because they feel they don't adhere to those stereotypes, and that can make people actually feel quite miserable.
How interesting is that? I mean, really, I haven't thought about it in that sense at all.
Yeah.
Suparna, you've had a nice trajectory of love, I would say, certainly not linear, and starting really young. Tell us a little about that.
So as Madhavi says, that it has a lot to do with desire. And of course, when you're young, you know, you don't really, you're not real. I mean, you don't understand, you know, how you have to live with it, you know, how realistic the idea is. You know, for you, the idea of love is, you know, all good things coming together, happy endings, you know, just feeling good all the time. Everything is just, you know, so beautiful and lovey-dovey. And of course, it has a lot to do with desire. You know, we are young, we don't know how to handle our hormones or just, you know, just get carried away. So, so yeah, I mean, you know, when you're young, you really have no idea what love is all about. Actually, I'm not just young. I think a lot of people, even at an older age, probably wouldn't know. But you know, it is something we're experiencing, something we're learning, and but especially when you're young, I think most important thing is to first, you know. Forget this notion of, you know, just happy endings or what you see on TV or what you read in books. You know, it is not like that. It is nothing like that. Love has got a lot to do with friendship, respect, companionship, you know, inspiring your partner, you know, just being good and true. It is not just sex and you know, or just having a feel-good factor. It is.
But that takes a while to come through, right?
It
I mean,
does.
you don't know that when you're.
It does, and
especially,
you know, over the time when you get into a relationship, when, you know, I mean, when you're young, you feel happy. Oh my God, you know, this guy is possessive about me. Oh my God, oh, he likes it when I, you know, he gets a little jealous, and you get a little kick out of it. It is all, it's all stupidity, really. Well, you know, I mean,
we know that now.
Yeah, so exactly, you have to go through, you know, all sort of things, your bad experiences and your good experiences, to understand what it really takes to, you know, have a healthy, loving relationship. So really, I mean, when you're young, you have no idea, no clue. It is all that you see from the movies, you know, the songs and the feel-good factor, what you read in books. It is anything but that.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, again, just going back to when you were that young, you were 19?
I was 19, yes, when I
very
badly fell in love.
And you were married within the next
year? All I wanted to do was to get married.
Right.
There was no ambition, there was no, there was nothing else really. All I wanted to do was get married, have a beautiful family, have a beautiful home, have beautiful kids. You know, please understand everything beautiful. You know, there was no room, there was no window for anything going wrong or you know, other than being beautiful. I just wanted to have a beautiful life.
Picture perfect.
It's a picture
image.
Perfect, yes, but it's not like that. So you definitely get a.
Well, But I mean, so as far as you are concerned, things turned around again many years later, right?
Yes.
So you have found love once again.
I have.
So
and I'm
now,
lucky to.
how do you define your love at this stage? How do you define love vis-a-vis love at 19?
So yes, like I said, when you're 19, you're ready to take on the world. There are people giving you all sort of gyan, that love will fly out a window once you're married, and once you are living together, or once you get used to a routine or So and it's like no, that is never going to happen to me. We will fight it all. We will love will keep us alive, literally.
Sab
but
ho jayega.
Sab ho jayega. मैं सब handle कर लूँगी. But at a vis-a-vis, I mean, when you're older and more experienced, I think you look at it in a whole sort of, what are the other things that you can deal with, whether it is practical, whether it is realist, whether you just become a little more practical in life. But of course, the idea still remains the same. I mean, I have found love once again, and touch wood, I'm very lucky to have that. But having said that, I still want to continue with my honeymoon period, and I still want my honeymoon period. I understand it is not really beautiful all the time. It can't be, but I definitely want to keep the magic alive. Sure. You have to work on it really, and every day, every single moment, you have to work on keeping the magic alive, and it's really a lot of hard work. It's a lot of effort.
Hard work, for
you
sure.
know. But if you believe in it, if you guys are ready for it, if you guys love each other so much, I think hard work is just, yeah.
It can be done.
Yes, it can be done.
So we spoke to a few young people, and we have a video which will tell you, Valentine Day video, which will tell you a little bit about what they think about love. Different perspectives, and a very interesting one. So we'll show you that video right now.
लव एक ऐसा इमोशन है जिसमें हम जैसे हैं वैसे ही रहे उस इंसान के साथ.
Love is a very strong attraction. How long will it last? I don't know.
प्यार clearly धोखा है. Love is being comfortable with each other.
प्यार होता है, अगर ये बिलीव करने की बात है, अगर बिलीव करते हो तो हो जाएगा.
लव यार, आजकल तो मैं लव और रिलेशनशिप्स में मोस्टली ब्रेकअप्स ही देख रही हूँ. मेरी हर दूसरी फ्रेंड मुझे कॉल करके यही बोल रही होती है उसका ब्रेकअप हो गया. तो आई डोंट नो व्हाट लव एग्जैक्टली इज.
Love is different for me. Like with every person, love is different.
Love is now confused with lust, and most people go for hookups rather than being in a real relationship. So the real meaning of love is somewhere lost.
वो तो सीक्रेट है.
इंटर्नशिप थोड़ा बहुत हुआ है प्यार में, थोड़ा सा एक्सपीरियंस हुआ है, उतना सा ही काम चला रहा हूँ.
I do love my girlfriend.
Yes, I have. I am in love, but ठीक है. It's just overrated a feeling, I feel. I think so. I have found love.
कोलकाता से ट्रैवल किया पंजाब तक.
I've written a 25-pager love letter front and back.
घर वालों से झूठ बोल के 3 दिन के लिए आउट ऑफ स्टेट इवेंट पंजाब टू कोलकाता मैंने ट्रैवल किया था जस्ट फॉर लव.
We have young people who are saying that they're not quite sure if love exists, but we also need to know that they're ready to do anything for love. They're ready to do these funny things and go here and there for love. So I want to ask you about that cynicism, that it exists. We've seen it with, a few people we've spoken to. We talked about it when we were discussing the whole concept of love. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you about that, especially in your interactions with young people in the university, the students, when you're having discussions on love and desire, and I'm sure it must be primarily about the subject matter, but what is it? Do you see that cynicism?
See, cynicism is not the opposite of love. Cynicism still believes in the fantasy of love, and is disappointed by it.
Yeah,
it's disappointed.
It's actually a great way to look at it.
It's not it's not the opposite.
It's not the absence.
Exactly. It's not the
Yeah.
absence of love. It's not a disbeliever in love.
Yeah.
Right.
It just sort of fears the disappointment that love will not live up to everything. So
Right.
cynicism is,
Interesting, yeah.
cynicism is fine, and I think good and should exist. I think it's the sort of normativizing of love that I find problematic, right? I mean, first of all, it is so gendered.
It's so gendered,
And
yes.
this is to go back to also what Suparna was saying earlier, this idea of women feeling that they have to find love, whatever that means.
Yes.
But women feeling absolutely disempowered from actually going out there and saying, I love you, or this is what I love.
Yeah.
They still wait to be asked,
To
to
be
be
asked.
showered with presents, to be whatever it is. I actually find young women today far more timid than we were, certainly.
Oh, is it?
Absolutely.
Is it? Oh, wow, that's an interesting.
Absolutely.
Opposite.
All their talk of being so out there and everything,
Yeah.
and they will still say, "Oh, I'm waiting for," and
To
and
be
we're talking
asked
about
out.
we're talking about heterosexual couples, yeah, waiting to be asked out. I'm not on any social media, sorry, Facebook, but someone was showing me some TikTok videos the other day, and one video which I found appalling was this woman and this young girl, 19-year-old girl, 19-year-old guy, getting out of a car, and they look at a restaurant, and she says, "Oh, I'm really hungry, let's go," and he pretends to lose his wallet, and she says, "Oh, okay, we'll go another day." It's like, don't you have your own wallet? Where is your money?
Yeah.
And this idea of women being utterly passive, utterly disempowered, is very much woven into this fabric of love that we're celebrating.
All in the society.
Which
actually,
is why I am deeply skeptical of what we call love. Because women have to have a sense of knowing who they are, what they want, and then if they sort of fall in love or find love with somebody, great.
Right.
But they cannot be the passive partners in this, in this love
I think
relationship.
it's got a lot to do with knowing what you want and what you are and your worth.
But also being okay with not knowing, right? Because we don't always know.
still exploring.
Right.
We don't always know what
Yeah.
we want. Being okay with not knowing, being okay with failing, being
Yeah.
okay with
Absolutely.
not succeeding,
Yeah.
right? This sort of idea that everyone has to be successful all the time. But except women can't be as successful as men,
Of course.
Okay.
right? And so that kind of thing I think is deeply problematic. And so if we're talking to an audience of mothers who
Of
are bringing
mothers,
up
yes.
bringing up children,
Yes.
you've got to bring up your daughters
Yeah.
to be much stronger and much more strong-willed and be much more skeptical about love. I mean, when I was in college, it was not that I was cynical about love or anything of the kind. It was just not high up on my priority list. I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. And if I was interested in someone en route, that's fine. But it was not top of the pops. It's not.
I'm not going to seek love for the sake of.
Or I'm not going to be told that that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
You need to be able to tell yourself what it is that you want to do first
Right.
and foremost.
Right. So this it's a very interesting perspective that you brought out, and the more I think about it, the commoditization of love, the way it is aimed at making the woman wait. That whole packaging is always the
Parul, like
young
what
girl
you
is
said
waiting.
when I was talking about the diamond ads, and you said,
Yes.
I hope the relevant people are listening.
I know, actually, that's true.
Right?
You're right, absolutely.
You should say, no, I'll go out and buy my own
Which I
diamond
have.
at the end of it. Exactly.
Which I have.
Exactly.
So why not? Why am I waiting?
Why are you waiting, and why aren't you announcing the fact that you can do it? right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is we need to tackle gender first.
No, you're very right. I think it's one of those subconscious things because it's the narrative that we're seeing around us.
Exactly.
Which just gets
Absolutely.
inside and you
It
don't
is
even
what
realize
you're,
it. It's,
you're
it's
just
subconsciously.
absorbing from watching your parents, your
Sure,
society, everything. So.
Right. So we have a very interesting comment from Nija who's watching, and she says, I believe that every age has their own definition of love. And I think that is something which is coming out very clearly
That's
over
so
here in
true.
this discussion. Suparna, just to extend the topic of cynicism, in your own life, in your own experiences, how hard did that hit you, the disillusionment and the disappointment, as Madhavi put it, because it really is that, that you have a certain expectation out of love. And I think it's very important for young people to hear that story as well.
Absolutely,
That, at the end of the day, their expectation is very, very far from reality.
And so was the case with me. My expectation was far from the reality. And it just it just came crashing down, and I was it was heartbreaking. It took me years to get over it, to understand what I am, my worth, to get out of my comfort zone, to get out of my depression, to get out and find yourself that love is not just everything, you know, you are important. What you do, how you keep yourself happy, there are other people dependent on you, your children, your family, your friends. You cannot be just, oh my God, this guy didn't love me back, so there you go. Life is gone. Everything is over. It's not like that, and it shouldn't be like that. You can't be so selfish and stupid. So you definitely, you know, your life is not just your own. You have to go out there and you have to make them proud, make yourself proud, make, you know, you just have to. So I mean, coming back to the question, I'm sorry, I get carried away.
No, that's okay. We're getting your point.
You know, I was cynical, and like Madhavi said, you know, it's actually, it stems out from the disappointment, you know, the fact that I'm not getting it. Where is it? When is it going to come? Does it really exist?
Yeah.
You know, so all these questions, I mean, I was very, very cynical and skeptical also, and really after I decided to get back up, love was not the priority. You know, keeping my daughters happy was a priority.
Love actually when it's not the priority.
That is true, and that's when I found love again. Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't. And before that, I was just obsessing about you know, and my universe revolved around you know him, and that's really sad. You are your universe. You know, you should love yourself
Exactly.
first.
Actually, that is just the point that, you know, at the end of the day, we have to realize that, there is love of different types.
Yes.
And if you are talking about being able to discover yourself, that's great. That's self-love.
It is.
And that's something which...
And also, I think my response to this has changed a little bit over the last 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Because before that, you know, professors are sort of used to sort of bitching and moaning about our students. Oh, they're so passive. They're so, you know, immersed in themselves. Because, of course, the flip side of self-love and acknowledgement of the self is self-absorption.
True.
And we sort of thought of our students as being very self-absorbed. But I must say, I am so proud of young people in India today as they are coming out to protest against the CA, to protest against the NRC. They finally realized that there is a universe of which they are a part.
And huge stakeholders.
And you have to, you can shape your universe. True. And finally having realized that ability to shape the world around you, I think that's going to make for a much healthier generation than they have been so far.
Absolutely. Like she said, you know, I mean, love wasn't like the top priority. There are other important things to do in life. You know, you have to give back to the society. What are you doing? I mean, how important are you to, you know, it's all of that is very, very important.
That's very encouraging to know, you know, that there is a young generation.
Too. I really, really do. I think our students are fantastic.
Across a lot of our episodes, through the episodes that we've had, we've brought in a lot of young people who've talked about their initiatives, some fabulous things that they're doing, and I agree with you that there is a lot of progressive thinking as far as these kids are concerned, and a lot of social responsibility. Much more than my generation, I know for a fact. So that's quite interesting to see.
But also just, you know, to go back to what I was saying earlier, the ability to speak up and speak out.
Yes.
And again, a lot of women, we are taught, I'm sure all of us were taught, you mustn't speak loudly, you mustn't speak up.
Speak when you're spoken to.
Exactly. And the ability now to sort of say, do narebazi on the street, to sort of go out and march. You have to hear your voice. If you don't hear your voice, it doesn't matter who else's voice you're listening to.
True.
Absolutely. So now before we have another video and where we've talked to two child psychologists, experts who are going to give us a little bit of a glimpse into what children are thinking, you know, young children. We talked about young people and we're talking about now teenagers, preteens, adolescents. But before that, I really need to acknowledge Rahul. He has been messaging us incessantly. And hello Rahul. Suparna, please just wave to him because
the flying kiss to you.
The adoring husband who has been So in case people think the mums who are watching think we're being spammed, that's the husband. Just so you know. So we'll play the expert video now, and just to give you a little bit.
So what I notice in my work with young people nowadays is that the definition of love is definitely expanding. What's coming in is not just the traditional notions of a romantic relationship, but also love between friends, which is being treated as just as sacred and just as uncompromisable as romantic love. there's also a turning inward, which is looking at self-love. So not just looking for validation outside, but seeking connection and resonance and validation from oneself to oneself.
I think one of the things that I often see is that love is not just about people seeking a partner, but it's about something larger than that. It's about identity. It's about finding solace, connection, warmth during times when you might not be finding those things as easily as physical gaps increase, as academic stress increases, as the world changes.
Not being able to, sometimes there being a gap. Sometimes you're not being able to find yourself, maybe a conflict in the family, maybe academic stress. So there being a gap somewhere, and you're not being able to.
It's comforting.
Yeah.
I mean, you
So
come back
love is
from work from
comforting.
a hard day, and you just need someone to hug you.
So that is also one more aspect of seeking
definitely.
love. Yeah. So we'll continue with that. We'll have some more information and we've got a lot of interesting tips from the experts, and they tell parents how to talk to your children about love. So please stay tuned, because I'm sure that is something you would all like to know
And
about.
it's very important.
Tips and tricks always, yeah.
Absolutely.
We have Parul Mahajan also giving us a tip there, and she says that they should teach this in senior school, that do not waste your 20s getting married. So great tip. We've got somebody behind the camera there, young lady in her 20s who strongly believes in that.
As do I.
As do I now.
Absolutely, yeah.
As do I now.
So, Madhavi, my question to you now is, Harshita and Bhavya talk a lot about expansive love. They talk about love in various definitions.
These are the child psychologists.
The child psychologists. And they talked about going beyond the linear script that was handed down to us. But they also say that a lot of those influences have come from social media, from pop culture, the movies we're watching. Talks like this, I mean, like basically having a conversation where you're given the ideas that, yes, there is much more beyond that linear script. Well, my question to you is that did that kind of pop culture exist in the past, in ancient India, in even medieval India? I mean, at any stage, where were those influences coming from? How did they know what to do?
Yeah.
And how to, what were those ideas being conceived out of?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, and I'm not sure I have an answer, but I will say that what we think of as popular culture today, and this is perhaps a measure of how far we've fallen or how far we've grown, depending on your perspective. It tended to be much, much more literary, not literally literate. You don't actually have to read and write. But if you just sort of look at popular gatherings, say mushairas or dastan gois, dastan gois were performed on the steps of the Jama Masjid, for instance. So that was popular culture. People would gather.
Right.
And if you sort of...
lyrical storytelling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And which would have references to 50 other stories that would come in.
Right.
So a lot of these popular gatherings, or even dance performances, for instance, classical dance performances, a lot of these gatherings were about conversations. They were about sort of taking something from here, something from there, putting it together, making something else, which is actually what gave India its utterly syncretic and pluralistic history. The idea that all these people are actually talking together, right? I mean, what Akbar did with trying to come up with the Deen-e-Ilahi, which is let's put all religions together in conversation and see what comes out of it. Let's take the best from everywhere instead of confining ourselves. So I really think just sort of keeping that canvas broad is one way of keeping it colorful. And the more we narrow it down, the less rich our lives become.
Which is unfortunately what it has become. Right
exactly.
now,
And the less rich our lives become, the more stale our popular culture becomes. And you find a sort of certain repetitiveness, which you wouldn't find. For instance, I'm a big fan of Bollywood and big fan of Hindi cinema.
Okay.
But I just think, for instance, Hindi cinema from the 70s and 80s was much more radical than a lot of what is produced now, except for the masala movies, which is still, Salman Khan's still way up there, Shah Rukh Khan's still way up there. Because what masala films do is they are capacious. They have people from everywhere, they have languages from everywhere, whereas sort of these niche films, for me, are very narrow. So popular culture in the sense of being broad and wide and eclectic, that was the fundamental assumption in the past. that we will always have conversations. You know, so for instance, you know, I'm not a dancer, but for instance, the very dance form of Kathak, and I don't know if that's your dance, Suparna. Kathak comes from Persian poetry. It was the first dance form in India that actually had standing legs, right? Everything else was bent.
Yes.
And then from that you develop the musical instruments, from that you develop more poetry, from that you develop dress. Everything gets interconnected.
True. That's right, yeah. Well, popular culture existed in a very, very rich form then, I would imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We had a little bit of a technical issue with the second video that we were showing you, the one with the psychologist. We'll just play that again.
So what I notice in my work with young people nowadays is that the definition of love is definitely expanding. What's coming in is not just the traditional notions of a romantic relationship, but also love between friends, which is being treated as just as sacred and just as uncompromisable as romantic love. There's also a turning inward, which is looking at self-love. So not just looking for validation outside, but seeking connection and resonance and validation from oneself to oneself.
I think one of the things that I often see is that love is not just about people seeking a partner, but it's about something larger than that. It's about identity. It's about finding solace, connection, warmth during times when you might not be finding those things as easily as you know, physical gaps increase, as academic stress increases, as the world changes. I think that earlier it used to be magazines when there was no television. Before that it used to be books. Before that it used to be folk tradition and oral stories. Now we have things that are a lot more real time. So there are things like Instagram. There's things like Facebook. There's there's the kind of TV we're viewing, which is really embracing the idea of expansive love. It's embracing the idea that you're not just looking at love as this like linear thing that you're supposed to follow like a trajectory of in life, but it's about these fluctuations that happen in life and how love can look differently at each stage. I think that's one of the biggest influences. And I also think that people are a lot more aware right now, like young people especially are a lot more aware that they have more choices than people, especially the generation before them, did. When it comes to gender, sexuality, the kind of relationships you want to have. Are you ready as a person to have, say, a full-fledged romantic relationship? Are you ready as a person to maybe just explore your sexual identity?
We are kind of like a melting pot generation. So we're being influenced by families and parents who have some of the traditional values around love and some of the traditional teachings around love. We are also part of the digital age, which is the information age. So there's a lot more awareness about different topics, topics of like toxic relationships and what to look out for, what are red flags, what are the kind of relationship standards we might be looking out for, where can we seek them, the different avenues where they come from. These are all influencing young people to make their choices in love.
A lot of the times it is something that can be very aesthetic in nature, that are people, and that's the negative side of it, I think, are we portraying a certain kind of love on social media? Are we portraying a certain kind of love to the rest of the world?
Yeah, it trends as hashtag relationship goals, about how a relationship should look like.
Yeah.
And that portrayal sometimes becomes more important than acknowledging that navigating a relationship is usually a really messy, imperfect process.
Yeah.
And that's part of what it means to be one human being connecting with another, that it won't always be great. But there may be great moments, but there will be spaces of conflict, there will be spaces that are uncomfortable, there will be spaces where boundaries are not the same as what each person wants. And knowing that makes a relationship very real, but what we want to portray is usually a perfect relationship. Hashtag relationship goals.
Yeah. Those are some of the pressures that social media can put on people if not navigated well.
Children are seeing things and they know that yes, it is acceptable now from being told that okay, this is a no. So that is what they probably mean by choices, that kids know that yes, there are things which are not wrong.
Yeah,
that
at least being a little more open about things than just, having a line cross and defining everything.
And being able to feel that, okay, being validated, that, okay, what I feel is not wrong. It is all right to feel in a certain way or to, maybe my orientation might be a little different from my best friends, but that's all right to do.
Absolutely. Like, how we've learned from our families and our parents that this is right and this is wrong. But we all grow up and then we unlearn those things.
Right.
Which is very important. Unlearn to learn. So,
Another point they made was about stress, and my question to them was that, is love stressful for young people? And their answer was that, I guess, at different ages, it's really a different kind of a definition of love for young people. And it probably gets stressful when you're in your 20s, when you are also dealing with a whole lot of other stuff. In the middle, it might just be stressful because of now social media, because you're portraying something which is beautiful.
Yeah, but
that whole image
may not be.
Because of course human relationships are complex, and so Suparna, let's talk a little more about that. You have young children, you yourself believed in that perfect, picture perfect, beautiful, idealistic kind of of love. So I mean, how do you see that happening with young people today? Is there more on Instagram than in real life?
It is definitely more on Instagram than on real life. I mean, it's scary how influenced and how all these social medias taken over the young minds and young generation and young kids.
Absolutely.
But having said that, it is very, very important to guide your children. Like I always tell them, this is not how it is. This is they're just putting up a show. This is not the real life. Please do not think that, oh my God, she's traveling everywhere, she's buying this, how do you know what her real story is behind those pictures?
Right.
And
very often it's not.
It is not.
What you're seeing because,
What very often? I'm sure 99% of the time it is not.
Absolutely.
So it's very important, not just for young kids, but even for older generation to understand that it is.
Yes.
It's just for you to see.
Yeah.
It is not how it is, but so
I think that's a point which, as parents, we really are. It's our responsibility to make sure that lesson goes home.
Absolutely.
We also I remembered another incident when we were talking about love and that whole idealistic versus expectations versus reality.
Yes.
Especially when you're young and you're falling in love, you do tend to invest everything into that relationship.
Yes.
And I remember talking to another friend, and she was talking about how things went sour at some stage. And she says, the only thing I wish I hadn't done was to invest everything into that relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that goes beyond just romantic love. We should probably not be doing that for any of our relationships.
Actually just romanticizing the idea of love.
Yeah. So you can't put everything into that.
You can't, and you shouldn't.
Yeah. You shouldn't.
And
whether it's actually love for my parents, my sibling, or anybody, romantic love, I cannot put everything into, all my eggs in one basket from that point of view, because if that goes sour, then I'm left with really nothing at all.
Yeah.
So that's again another lesson for us parents to make sure we drive home. Madhavi, in your book, you have talked about desire being something that escapes control. And that is when it also becomes dangerous. And especially in today's context of sexual violence, of violence at any level. Do you think all the repression, and what is the connection there, desire, control, repression, violence, is there, do you see that being a vicious cycle at some level?
Unfortunately, yes. I think, so far we've been talking about how desires, wonderful, multiple desires are multiply wonderful.
But lead to obsessions.
But desire has a very real underbelly, and it can be very dangerous. People who, men who rape women often say they love them.
Yeah.
Men who throw acid on women's faces say they love them. So this idea of love can be and is a very scary notion.
And I think it's also a lot to do with their egos. I don't think they can face rejection, and and they kind of justify it by saying that, but I loved her.
But this is why the idea of failure is so important to actually think about and acknowledge and
to accept.
and accept that, love is bound up with failure, not with success.
Absolutely.
But the more we sort of have this sort of, Valentine's Day pedestalization of love, saying it's the most important thing, the less people are going to be comfortable with failure. True. So love is something quite dangerous and can be quite scary. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with repression. In fact, it can often have to do with the opposite, with the encouragement to express your love, right? And then when you express your love and you don't get anything back, that's when it can turn into this kind of violent attack. Right. So yes, of course, repression has its own dangers, but this kind of pedestalization of love is extremely dangerous as far as I'm concerned.
I started by saying we won't obviously be able to discuss everything on one day.
Yeah.
It is so complicated.
It is so complicated. And in fact, you said to me earlier, Parul, that you wanted to do a sort of slightly lighter, happier show for Valentine's Day. I'm sorry I'm ruining that, but that's not happening. But it's a more realistic show.
It is realistic, absolutely. This is a conversation that needs to happen, and that is what we stand for. Yeah. Because these things are not discussed. Who talks about the dark underbelly of love and desire? Exactly. But it is there, and I think we need to all be very, very clear that it's there and how to handle it.
True. Yeah.
So, which brings us to how to handle it, how to talk to your children about love, how to represent love and desire, especially to young women, like we discussed earlier. And Madhavi had a very, very important and a significant point over there, point to be taken by all of us. Suparna, do you want to add something else on how to talk to love?
Like how she said that, it is very, very important to be okay with failures, to accept failures, because, it is all right. It's not the end all of everything. It's, because, and that's what I tell my daughters also. I mean, it's all right. If it didn't work out, it's all right.
It is very, very useful.
And it is important. It is important for you to learn that lesson, for you to understand and learn from your mistakes and your failures. Otherwise, you're never going to grow and never going to understand what it is. So, failing is all right. It's okay, and yes, love is not everything. There are other things you have to first, you have to become what you are, and then if love happens, that's great. If it doesn't happen, doesn't matter.
Which is right. Do not invest everything into that aspect of life called love, because there's so much more which is there. We have a very interesting question from Lalita, and she wants to know, and I'd like both of you to weigh in on this, how to teach our teen the difference between love, like, and infatuation. So, any thoughts, Madhavi?
It's all actually very closely
love, like,
interlinked.
Yeah.
There's a very, very thin line. I think you got to give it time to understand what really is infatuation, just liking and love, and so I think with time you'll understand that.
But equally, I think they're all interrelated.
It is interrelated. Like
I mean, hopefully you are infatuated with the person you love,
Absolutely.
and you should be.
You should be,
and hopefully you like the person.
You love totally.
Well.
Very important to like the person,
because often you can love people you don't like.
That's true. That's true.
And so but they're all part of the same crop. I don't think you can distinguish among them. And again, I think sort of trying to pass these things so closely is actually not the best way to go ahead. Just sort of thinking about how they exist as a complex whole is much more useful.
Yeah, and why not